I will invite Oshrat Wolfling Assa. She's a PhD student from the Technion, an active architect holding a bachelor's degree from the Technion and also an MA from the Faculty of Architecture and Town Planning with honors in architectural conservation. And she will present work done by her and in collaboration with architect Ruth Liberty Shalev and Tal Alon Moses. Oshrat.
So good morning, everyone. I'm Oshrat. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. And my presentation, which is part of my PhD under the advisory of Tal Alon Moses and Ruth Liberty Shalev, will be on the transboundary and transnational properties. And it will review their success as platforms for international cooperation and improved representativity in the World Heritage List. The 1972 World Heritage Convention concerning the protection of world cultural and natural heritage turned heritage protection into an international effort and stated it should be through an international cooperation system, which we are now familiar with as the World Heritage List. The aim of this presentation is to investigate whether shared inscriptions created as a joint effort of several state parties succeed as a platform for this much hoped for international cooperation, and whether they aid better representativity in inclusion of varied state parties and themes in the World Heritage List. The methodology of this presentation is based on the analysis of the list inscriptions according to several attributes. The inscription trends along the list timeline since 1978, the first year of the inscriptions. Classification according to global, region, and state parties. And lastly, classification according to the type of inscription and the nature of the heritage, natural versus cultural. Now, properties inscribed on the World Heritage List are typically single land areas located within the borders of a single state party. But this presentation will discuss special types of properties which are mentioned here: serial, transboundary, and transnational properties. So first, let us refresh the terms. When we speak of serial properties, they are a collection or ensemble of sites linked specifically in some cultural, social, or functional ways over time, and where each site contributes substantially to the OUV of the whole property in a way that should be readily understood. Meaning, serial properties are not a random accumulation of components, but a deliberate choice of heritage properties assigned together as part of a broader theme with collective unique qualities. A transboundary property is a continuous area which extends across the borders of neighboring state parties. Since it is one geographical area divided by current international borders, it will often be related, as we will see shortly, mainly to natural heritage phenomena. On the other hand, a transnational property is a series of components located in the territory of different state parties, meaning it is a collection of components relating to a shared theme rather than to one physical area, and therefore might be more inclined to cultural thematical nomination. The focus on these types is due to UNESCO's intentions as a UN specialized agency to address them as a catalyst for international cooperation, something that is at the heart of the World Heritage Convention. Hence, these nomination types are perceived by the World Heritage Mechanism as a practical way to promote global peace and understanding, the ideal rooted within all United Nations agencies. The affinity to UN objectives is accomplished through the following two major goals: fostering of international peaceful cooperation and promoting improved representativity of state parties, cultures, and themes by endorsing diversity and inclusiveness. In this diagram, we present the relations between the three types mentioned. The diagram also introduces the term multinational properties to describe both transboundary and transnational properties, since they both require the collaboration of two or more state parties in whose territories the components of the nominations are located. The term is borrowed from Professor Haspel's essay for ICOMOS Germany, when he addresses multinational proposals as an opportunity to create a more balanced list and promote the cause of international understanding through international cooperative projects. As mentioned, these properties are perceived as tools to promote international cooperation aspirations in accordance with United Nations objectives. These objectives appear in the 1945 Inauguration Charter, stating that the purposes of the United Nations are to maintain international peace and security, to develop friendly relations among nations, and to achieve international cooperation. The same objectives continue to inspire the recent 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, which defines itself as the blueprint to achieve a better and more sustainable future for all, addressing global challenges and promoting universal respect. As one of the United Nations specialized agencies, this spirit also prevails at UNESCO. Its constitution declares that it is based on intellectual and moral solidarity, and its purpose is to contribute to peace and security by promoting collaboration among the nations. As presented here, in order to promote the use of these special types and through them support international cooperation, the World Heritage Mechanism facilitated their use by allowing state parties, co-authors of a transboundary or transnational serial nomination, to choose the state party which will be bearing the nomination. Meaning, despite quantitative limitations on the annual number of proposed nominations imposed on the list by the World Heritage Mechanism in 2005, multinational proposal state parties can divide the load among themselves and thus bypass at least part of the general limits. As noted here, and as we will see shortly, easing of these limitations was followed by an increase in serial and transnational nominations on the list. After this short introduction, it is the place to ask, first, what are the nomination trends of serial, transboundary, and transnational properties along the years? And second, what is their influence on international cooperation and improved representativity of state parties and themes in the list? Next slides will show different analyses to try and answer these two questions. The first graph presented here shows the growing use of all special type properties, serial and multinational, in World Heritage nominations. Annually inscribed special types nominations are represented in blue, while green represents annual single property inscriptions. The growth of the relative share of all special type properties on the World Heritage List is striking when we follow the red line, which signifies their percentage within the total number of annual inscriptions. From low to medium percentages numbers in the 1980s and 1990s, their annual share in the last decade comprises more than 30 and 40%. In 2021, it reached a record of 62% with 21 nominations out of a total 34. These figures show the growing use of these types in the last 20 years, making them a dominant feature in the composition of the list. Following two charts compare the different global region participation. Comparing the whole list on the left to the group of special type properties on the right shows significant similarities between the two. The charts demonstrate the similarity in the relative share of each region. This means that the same global regions and therefore similar state parties are behind the prosperity of special properties on the list, and regional representativity maintains the same trends. Now, after reviewing all special type inscription trends and the regional distribution, we focus on multinational properties, which are the transboundary and transnational properties created as a collaboration of two or more state parties. This graph presents the number of multinational properties compared to all property inscriptions. We can observe the relatively small quantity of multinational properties and their changing distribution. From a decade of only one multinational property inscription between 1983 and 1994, we can see successive inscriptions in the last decades, again leading to the record year of 2021 with 4 multinational inscriptions. Following graph shows the distribution of transboundary versus transnational properties along the years. We see a clear shift, also evident in the marked trend lines. Property types change from violet colors transboundary in the 1980s and 1990s to light blue transnational in the last 20 years. When we observe the trends of natural heritage, we can see the obvious connection between natural themes and transboundary properties. Since most transboundary heritage is natural, we notice how the shift from transboundary to transnational is reflected here in the decrease of natural properties and a probable increase in cultural ones along the years. These trends of transboundary versus transnational and natural versus cultural might also reflect perception changes among state parties as the World Heritage Mechanism is evolving. Its state parties shift from inscribing straightforward one area natural phenomena to more widespread thematic related cultural heritage inscriptions, which are not confined to one specific location. Now, in these charts, we return to comparing global region participation as a symbol of the obtained representativity. Next to the previous charts that we already saw on the left, which describe the whole heritage list and the whole group of special properties, we add a third diagram. This diagram reflects the regional participation only within the group of multinational properties. We can conclude that multinationality amplifies the trends we already observed. Europe and North America region grows to be 68% of all inscriptions, while the Arab region vanishes with zero participation. However, Africa's growing share can be attributed to its transboundary natural inscriptions in the 1980s and 1990s. To support these conclusions regarding regional representativity, we present the following two lists. Both present the state parties which have the biggest numbers of inscriptions. Comparing multinational properties to all special type properties show 10 identical names, all of which are part of the Europe and North America region. Moreover, in the list of multinational properties, Argentina is the only exception to this all-European group. These two lists prove again that international cooperation doesn't bear the same amount of representativity fruits around the globe. Following quote recaps the differences between multinational properties and single state party serial properties. Whilst the number of inscribed transnational serial properties is relatively low, a closer analysis reveals that 145 are being de facto serial properties comprised within the boundaries of one country. These figures show that the serial approach has been a common nomination strategy at the national level, while transboundary or transnational cooperation remained rather limited until recently. But besides this comparison between the two types, this quote conveys a discussion over the nature of these special properties. Are they just a strategy aiding to bypass limitations, or are they value-defined processes? Since, as we can see in the quote here, the values authenticity and integrity should determine the appropriate boundaries and the application of the serial approach, it means there cannot be de facto series determined only by the number of their component parts. This brings us to our conclusions on the influence of transboundary and transnational properties on the list. Our analysis presented the following trends: a shift from transboundary to transnational nominations, accompanied by a shift from natural to cultural heritage. We also noted a growth in size, number of components, and the number of state parties. All of these are due to the shift from geographically natural-oriented phenomena to thematic or narrative-based cultural inscriptions. Recent cultural inscriptions tend to present more globally oriented themes, such as Struve's mapping of the world, Roman Empire influence, or cultural development along caravan routes. Multinational cooperation, then, seems to be most common in natural phenomena or ancient historical and archaeological themes. These trends maintain the dominance of Western-oriented regions and state parties in the list. Participation rates of state parties in global regions remain similar or are even amplified to the already observed trends on the list. Only 3 inscriptions are compiled from different global regions. The OUV Basin and landscapes of the Uria are both natural heritage of neighboring Russian Federation in the European region and Mongolia in Asia. The third is the work of Le Corbusier, which includes the legacy of this prominent Western figure in Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Moreover, multinational properties as part of the World Heritage Mechanism still have to fulfill some missing opportunities, such as Arab region participation, First Nations people and their cultural perspective, and dissonant heritage of recent historical periods. Lastly, we conclude by reviewing Erich Mendelsohn's proposal, transnational property, in light of our conclusions. The theme of architecture of dialogue, which links between immigration and multiculturalism, corresponds to current diversity and inclusiveness aspirations. Yet, Erich Mendelsohn is an historical figure, and the state parties which are related to his legacy are all located in the heart of Western dominance, both physically and culturally. In this sense, Mendelsohn's proposal can be added to the still short list of modern architectural legacies, but it will not challenge current trends and missing opportunities. Thank you.